Welcome back. We thank you for staying with us. Our conversation with Raila Odinga on KTN News continues. The hashtag to continue to use is Raila on KTN News, and continue to engage with us. We're live on air and online at ktnnews.com. Thanks for staying with us, Mr. Odinga. I'd just like us to listen to what you had to say in Kibra a little earlier today. Before we move on, to other parts of this conversation that we'd like to touch on, especially with what a number of other people have had to say. But let's just start off by listening to what you had to say today in Kibra.
Alisema Bwana Chiloba na wale wengine walihusika wote wawekwe kando, hajawekwa kando. Sasa wanasema ati IEBC tayari sasa imeungana pamoja. Ati they are now united. They are going to do the elections as a united team. We are saying we are not ready to go back to an election with those teams. Hatukubali. Sisi tumeweka masharti. Tumesema wale wote ambao walihusika na wizi ya kura mpaka watoke. Pamoja na commissioner ambaye anaitwa Bwana Gulie. Tumesema watoke. Wasipotoka tutaenda kuwatoa. Sasa sisi tumeambia Uhuru Kenyatta hawezi kututisha. Leo wameenda kufungua bunge. Bunge ambayo inafungua ni bunge 12. Yeye ni rais wa 11. Rais wa 11 hawezi kufungua bunge wa 12. Bunge wa 12 inafunguliwa na rais wa 12.
All right, and you're hoping to perhaps be that president that would, address a joint sitting of both houses of the National Assembly. Let's talk about then, before we get into that, because you mentioned there in that clip that, if these people don't go, Chilobas Potoka. So again, just to understand very quickly, we want to close on this issue and then move on. What then? No elections, then what's the game plan thereafter? So let's imagine, if you will, that there will be no election, as you say. Then what? Is this the last we see or hear of you? What is the game plan for you, for your supporters, for the country, if you're saying there will be no election?
No, you see, there are two things. Jubilee nominating themselves is not an election. An election is people of Kenya going to vote through their ballot, casting their ballots for specific candidates. That is when there's an election. You are electing somebody. But if somebody wants to walk on his own, that is not an election.
But if one candidate chooses not to participate in that, then there is still a position that allows for an election like that, for one to go unopposed.
Not say that we want to boycott. We're not boycotting. We said we want to participate, but we shall participate under certain conditions that will ensure that there's going to be a free, fair, and credible election.
Do you trust this commission to do that? Because you said in that clip that they're now united, but you're not sure what united means. You just said, it could be united for the wrong purpose. Yes. So do you trust this commission? They've just come out of, a 2-day retreat where they, sought to air their grievances with each other and have resolved to work together as one. Do you not trust this commission to do that?
No, the commission is acting under duress.
From whom?
From the Jubilee side. They are under duress. That's why the chairman's character has changed. You know that before they went to Naivasha, the chairman's security was withdrawn. The security was withdrawn and was under surveillance. So he's a man under siege, acting therefore under duress. The same thing with the other commissioners who are offering alternative views. So this is now a commission which is being streamlined by Jubilee to do Jubilee's bidding. And we're saying that that is not right. We want a truly independent commission to act independently. What else can we conclude if you see that the chairman raised very fundamental issues, 12 points in a memo to the CEO? Those points have not been addressed. Now he's saying they're united. There's unity in crime. We don't think that the chairman would want to do that voluntarily. So we think that the chairman is acting under duress, and other commissioners.
So let's move away from the commission for one moment and to your readiness for the election. We've seen President Uhuru Kenyatta having a number of meetings with religious leaders, with members of the Private Sector Alliance. And in fact, then we have seen quite a number of movements, as would be expected at a time like this. But so what are your thoughts on all of these defections? We saw Ukambani leaders meeting with the president yesterday. We've seen leaders from Western Kenya. Isaac Ruto, who was one of your principals, now jumping ship. And also, more recently, to the events that have happened today. Mr. Odinga, your reaction to Peter Munya, who not more than 7 days ago was with you, but today is supporting the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. What does all of this mean for you? And it looks like movements are in one direction and not in the other.
See, there are movements in two directions. The movement of the leaders who lost in elections, who are basically trying to look for opportunities. Those ones, you can call them opportunists.
Was Mr. Munya an opportunist when he was supporting your side just less than 7 days ago?
I've received a message from Mr. Munya, which tells me that he was under a lot of pressure. And therefore, he had no other choice. And understand, and I've excused him. So I have no problems at all. But you need to know that I got a lot of votes in Munya's backyard when he was supporting Uhuru in the last elections. So my support in Meru County is still intact. In fact, if anything else, I think it has increased because of what happened. You see, Mr. Munya has been campaigning for me until yesterday when he was called and then was basically blackmailed. So those happened because these are casualties.
Do you think that was the same for Isaac Ruto?
Certainly. Certainly. So you call those people casualties in the struggle. You move on.
All right. Okay, Mr. Odinga, how would you then say that Mr. Munya, if what you are saying is Mr. Munya was campaigning for you. Less than 7 days later, he's campaigning for Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. What then guarantees you of the Meru vote, of the Kamba vote, from where your running mate hails? David Musila, who was a former party chair of Wiper, and a number of other leaders, what then guarantees you the vote? And some would say, well, look at all of these movements that are happening. You're saying it's under duress, but the same way you say they were campaigning for you, they could now very easily shift that vote.
No, I really don't begrudge them that. I just wanted to know that Mr. Munya, before he came to us, was in Jubilee. His party, the PNU, was part of the Jubilee enterprise in the elections. But in spite of that, we got a lot of votes in Meru.
And now he's taking all those votes with him to Jubilee, is he not?
No, I'm saying he was on the other side. He was not with us in the election. So he cannot take those votes. Those were our votes. They're still our votes.
Regardless of whether or not he's supporting you?
Exactly. So, and the others have also come. Quite a number of people are joining us.
Like whom?
Not just individuals. You saw the other time we got 5 parliamentary candidates from the Embu, Tharaka-Nithi region who were rigged and who were dissatisfied coming to join us just last week. We have got a number of people coming to join us from Masai land, other people joining us from the Kalenjin land, and so on and so forth. So we are actually receiving a lot of people from Mandera, from Garissa, from Marsabit, and so on. So we are receiving a lot of people. Our headquarters is busy on a daily basis. You're only seeing a few people going, a delegation going to the State House. By the way, State House should not be a venue for campaign for the president. That is an institution that is national. The president lives in the State House as a head of state, not even as a head of government. The government headquarters should be in Harambee House. But now it's turned the State House into a Jubilee campaign headquarters. That's where defectors are being handed to go to State House. It's an abuse of the position of a head of state.
Let's talk about if you were to be head of state and if you win the election, be that as it may, you're talking about numbers that are coming to your end. But the truth of the matter is that in the National Assembly, actually in both houses, that is the National Assembly and in the Senate, Jubilee enjoys a comfortable majority in that respect. How would you then be able to rule, to govern, to pass legislation, to pass a budget even, without having a minority? In fact, if we can, before we even get you to answer that question, let's listen to Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, who has talked about possibly impeaching you with the numbers that he claims to have in both houses of parliament. This is Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta.
The National Assembly, with 220-something, we are only now 13 members shy of a two-third majority, meaning we can even change the Constitution of Kenya, without a single member of NASA. With 41 senators elected and nominated, we can do business in the Senate without a single member of NASA present in the Senate. Hata akichaguliwa, we have the opportunity in Parliament within 2 months, 3 months. Tumemtoa.
Your reaction to that?
That is an illusion. And it is really what you call delusions of grandeur. First, Jubilee's elected members are 173. People who are elected as Jubilee. The ones he's talking about are people elected in other political parties. Some of them, majority of them, are independents, not necessarily Jubilee. But all in all, they are really 20 seats short of getting what you call absolute majority in the National Assembly. Okay. In the Senate, their total number is 40 against 27. In other words, there are only 13 seats more than those of NASA. Okay? So, but then, on the issue of impeachment, there are very clear provisions how a president is supposed to be impeached. First, you must bring a motion in the National Assembly. And then you must then get two-thirds majority approval in the National Assembly. Then you need to formulate the charge. Then the charge is then now taken to the Senate. And then the Senate now is like a hearing, it's like a court. Then you need to get the two-thirds majority in the Senate to impeach a president. You don't just impeach a president because he's not from your party, unless he has committed something very serious. And those are spelled out in the Constitution. But you need to know, President Obama, in this last term, did not have a majority in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, but was able to run a most successful government for 4 years with a minority.
But that would require Mr. Odinga reaching out, to members on the opposite side of the political divide. What would your strategy be then with respect to that? Because it truly does take numbers to pass legislation.
That if you get those other independents and the other parties which are not necessarily Jubilee.
Yeah, but a lot of those other parties have, pledged affiliation to
They would
Jubilee.
always pledge affiliation to the government, those political parties. So he is actually suffering from what I told you, the illusions of grandeur.
But ODM did not pledge affiliation to the government in the 11th Parliament. I'm asking what your strategy would be in terms of reaching out to all of these other members of different parties.
In a pure presidential system, like they have in the US, you have a clear separation of powers. You've got the legislature, you've got the judiciary, and the executive, which is what it is. The executive all the time negotiates with the legislature, depending on the agenda, the issue. Like even right now, if they want to do a constitutional amendment, they have to negotiate with us because they don't have the numbers to introduce a motion that will translate into amendment of the Constitution. So they need us right now. More than we need them as an opposition. So in the kind of constitutional dispensation that we have right now, it's always a question of give and take.
Okay.
The executive has to negotiate with the legislature.
All right. State of cohesion in the country. Elections are divisive, as they always are. This one particularly, so we've gotten to the Supreme Court. We're now going into another exercise on the 17th of October. So, I mean, needless to say, people are, on either side. You are either with or against us. You either support one side or the other. How would you propose to bring this country together after this whole process is done?
First, on this issue of majority, you need to know that the majority that they're enjoying here is artificial. Because for once, we have had this rigging that took place across board. You've got governors who are basically also computer chicks.
That is yet to be determined by those that have taken their petitions.
That's why you've got the highest number of petitions in our history this time round.
We will wait to see the outcome of that before making a judgment.
So I'm just telling you that Uhuru is basically wallowing in what you can call a kind of a balloon, which is soon going to be pricked, and the numbers are going to be adjusted accordingly.
All right, we'll see about that. Let's talk about cohesion. Cohesion in the country.
Yes.
How you would propose to bring a country together, whether or not you win on the 17th.
Elections, Yvonne, are always polarizing, because people campaign very passionately. And because of this, you'll find that you've got two extremes on both sides. But, this country can only move forward by uniting the people. After an election, you need to bring various factions together so that you have harmony and peace so that the economy can grow. At the moment, the economy is hurting. Businesses are hurting. Everybody knows that. And you find that a lot of money is being lost in the country. We don't need this to continue for a longer time. We need to move in with speed immediately after the elections to unite the country. So that, and we ourselves want to have an inclusive government. Unlike Jubilee, which has polarized this country through ethnic exclusion, where you've got only a few communities in government. Ours is going to be a very, very inclusive government. We will bring all the communities together.
All right, and I'd like us to talk a little bit more about just what it means to bring the country together. Mr. Raila Odinga says the country is hurting. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Another quick break. We're right back.